Chapter 5. The Quest Continues. Arthur's knights were good servants of the kingdom, but only a few of them understood the true nature of their quest. Many of them believed that by fighting enemies in armed combat and saving maidens from thieves and murderers, they were performing their duties. During the time they searched for the Holy Grail, these knights had many adventures, but none were granted a vision of the holy vessel. There were a few men of heart and courage whose noble characters took them farther on the quest. These men were granted adventures that tested their inner strength and wisdom. They discovered that through their pride, jealousy, and anger, they could be tempted away from their noble mission. Some of the worthiest knights, like Percival, Lancelot, Gawain, and Bors, were granted visions that revealed to these knights what stood between them and the Holy Grail. With the help of holy men, the visions were interpreted, and the knights were told what they must do to overcome their weaknesses. Lancelot and Gawain could not, or would not, conquer their weaknesses, but Percival and Bors remained steadfast. Of all 150 knights of the Round Table, only these two men were with Galahad when he achieved the Holy Grail. After Percival and Bors had reflected on their visions, prayed, and confessed, they were taken away on an enchanted ship to wait for Galahad. The one true knight had continued through the wasteland. Along the way, he found many opportunities to test his strength and save innocent people from injustices. Eventually, Galahad rode by a castle. A tournament was being held there, so he decided to stop. When he saw that the knights of the castle needed help against their opponents, he joined the battle. Some of Arthur's knights were fighting for the opponents. Gawain and Ector recognized Galahad and tried to stay clear of him. In the confusion, this proved to be impossible. Eventually, Galahad approached his fellows and gave Gawain a terrible wound with his mighty sword. Ector took Gawain into the castle, hoping that his friend could be healed. As soon as Galahad was certain that the knights of the castle had gained the advantage, he left. Feeling tired, he decided to stop at a hermitage for the night. At this point, he was not far from the Grail castle. The hermit welcomed him and gave him a place to sleep. Not long after he had fallen asleep, he was awakened by a knock on the door. The hermit came in with a noble woman, who requested that Galahad accompany her to a castle by the sea. Galahad agreed, and they left the hermitage. Soon Galahad and the noble woman reached the castle by the sea. The mistress of the castle welcomed them. The noble woman said that they would be grateful for the hours of rest at the castle, but would leave before dawn. Before they left, the mistress gave Galahad a new shield. Then the noble woman took Galahad's hand and led him to the sea. In the waves, a ship was rocking peacefully. Galahad and the noble woman boarded the ship. Percival and Bors, who were already on the ship, embraced Galahad. "Tell me, my friends, what trials brought you here?" Galahad asked. They told Galahad about their great adventures. "Indeed, you are worthy knights," Galahad said. "You have faced and defeated many temptations and are now ready to follow me on this journey." As the ship glided through the sea, the knights rejoiced that they were together. "Our company would be complete if your father, Sir Lancelot, were among us," Bors said. Galahad nodded his head, but said, "That is not to be. This journey had been foretold and unravels according to a plan laid out before we were born. Although we cannot see the steps before we take them, we must continue with faith that we will achieve what we set out to find." The knights looked across the sea and saw a second ship coming toward them. The noblewoman said that the first part of their journey was about to end. "You must consider whether you are ready for the next part." Their vessel sailed easily through the water and came up against the second ship. An inscription on the prow stood out clearly. It read, "No man shall board this vessel except he whose faith is unshakable. If you are a true knight, have no fear. You will be welcomed." Galahad moved to board the ship, and the others followed. They silently walked through the passages, marveling at the elaborate decorations. In one chamber Galahad found a crown made of silk and a sword on a bed. The sword had been partially drawn from its sheath. The sword was a masterful work of art. The inscription on the sword read, "The hilt of this sword was created for one hand. It belongs to a knight of surpassing virtue." Galahad felt his hand tingle. He knew that the sword was designed for him, but when Percival said that he would like to try, Galahad stepped aside. Percival gripped the sword and tried with all of his strength to raise it from the bed. He could not lift it. He motioned for Bors to try. Bors failed as well. After a few moments Galahad walked to the bed, lightly gripped the sword, and gently raised it from the bed. Percival and Bors hung their heads. Once again their pride had blinded them to the truth about themselves and their noble companion. "Do not be sorrowful," Galahad said. "I will carry the sword for all of us. It will give us courage and strength for the final adventures on our quest for the Holy Grail."